I recently came across an article in the Wall Street Journal, of all places, that really upset me. It basically is saying that you can't road trip effectively with an EV, and as it so happens, the mileage that she did in driving between New Orleans and Chicago and back is almost exactly the same distance that I did on 2 recent road trips that were basically back to back. So I want to take a look at that, and I want to show how driving an EV for a road trip is actually better than driving an ICE car. Let's take a look. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All, so I'm going to leave a link to this article in the description. You do have to sign up in order to see it. You don't have to pay anything, but whatever. But anyway, I don't want to read the entire thing. It's a relatively long article. This is in the Wall Street Journal. It's a very reputable publication, and that's one of the reasons why this is upsetting to me. If this was, Bob's ICE car vehicle, blog or something along those lines, then I'd be like, okay, then fine. He's just trying to, whoever was just trying to prove that driving an ICE car was better than driving an EV. But this is a little bit ridiculous. The primary, issue with this is in the title, etc., right? It essentially says, I spent more time charging it than I did sleeping. In other words, I spent more time charging the vehicle than sleeping on what ended up being a 4-day road trip. Although honestly, 2,000 miles, it's pretty wussy to do that in 4 days. I could do that in a lot less time than 4 days. But anyway, so it was 4 days. It was broken up into what would be about 500 miles per day, I guess. So anyway, that's the basic idea here. And Rachel Wolf is the author, obviously. And I do want to say that if the Wall Street Journal wants me to do an article on this, I've published 12 books. A whole bunch of them are back there. I've published more grants and articles, and I can't even count. I don't know. So anyway, and I've got a PhD in English, so I promise I can write you a decent article that would be a counter to this example. I don't know. There's 2 possibilities here. One is that the author, that Ms. Wolf, is really trying to write a hit piece against electric vehicles. The other one, which I think is more likely, is that she really didn't do her research. And both of those are pretty reprehensible for writing in a major publication, but I'll go with the ignorance one probably. So anyway, let's just take a look at some of the highlights of this. I thought it would be fun, right? Mac and she went on this trip and they're going to make this less money, more time. That's obviously true. I've looked around and, basic charging costs, depending on where you're going. And when we did our trip, I actually have a whole bunch of free supercharger miles. So it's a little difficult for me to judge exact amounts of money, but it's on the order of $5 to $10 to charge up your vehicle at each stop, as opposed to this. So that's basically, 1 to 2 gallons of gasoline right now at the current rate. So, if you think about how many gallons of gas you burn through on a 300 mile stretch or 250 mile stretch, and then you figure how much that would cost versus $5 to $10, that's approximately right. So there's no question it definitely costs less money to drive an EV than it does to drive an ICE vehicle on a road trip, without a doubt. So anyway, so that was that thing. But what we've got is, less time, more money. Made all these stops. She does say that she had looked at the PlugShare app and figured out a route. I don't know why she didn't do some more research and actually use a better route planner. It's such a good app and everybody out there knows about it. But it seems like a pretty obvious thing to do, is to do a little bit more research. One really big thing that's an issue that she had immediately is right here, a brand new Kia EV6. So why, just as a bit of information, and I'll skip down to this graph just to show this, is here you've got the US auto market share. So you can see that Tesla up here is actually above 70% right now in terms of market share. I don't know why. And Hertz, of course, rents Model 3s out. So it's very easy to rent a Tesla vehicle right now, relatively speaking. I don't know why she didn't go with a Tesla in the first place, because it's much more. You can see Hyundai Kia here is way down here at, I don't know, approximately 10%. These are weird because these bars are approximately 6.7% per bar as opposed to some normal number like 5. So anyway, I'm having to kind of guesstimate, but it's somewhere around 10% versus Tesla up here, which is around 70%. So why she didn't rent a Tesla, I have no idea. She would have had an entirely different experience if she had. But anyway, she didn't. So therefore, you know, there we go. $175 on charging seems pretty excessive. Again, I don't charge at these, you know, Ionity or Electrified America or anything like that. I tend to charge at the superchargers because I get free things, but I also can see how much it would have cost me otherwise. And it's not nearly that much money. So the savings is much, much bigger than what she's saying, at least if you drive a Tesla. But anyway, the charging costs are not the real issue here. The really big issue is just the charging nuances, charging infrastructure. She said, you know, it was when it says it's fast, it's not fast. Essentially what she did was she got to places that had very, very low kilowatt rated chargers. I don't know why. The apps should have given her much better directions and should have sent her to faster chargers. They're on the route. You know, you can see them. Better Route Planner, for example, just tells you right flat out. It's like, go to these places. It tells you exactly how much time you have to spend at each one of these things. So none of this stuff makes a lot of sense. Also, of course, there are issues with a lot of these other chargers not being up when they're supposed to be. So you arrive at a place and it's not functional, so that's an issue. Tesla has recently said, Elon Musk, in fact, recently said that they're going to open up Tesla superchargers to the CCS standard, which is pretty, you know, across the board kind of thing. And I think J1772, I believe that's the one in the United States. But anyway, it'll just require an adapter for people who don't have Teslas to use it. So that will be a huge advantage when that happens because Tesla superchargers are everywhere. These other chargers are there, but a lot of times it's only 1 or 2 chargers and they may not be at the speed that you want them to be, so you can end up charging for a lot longer. So anyway, you know, 24 kilowatts, that is pathetic. That's 1/10 of most of the Tesla superchargers that are being built right now. They're at 250. So that's going to take a freaking long time to charge up if you're at a 24 kilowatts charger, not supercharger. That's a regular charger. So anyway, you know, missed reservations, all sorts of issues, you know, giant chicken. I have no idea what that has to do with anything. But anyway, you know, wandering through Kroger, there are things about smiling at gas prices, but this is the part I want to get to. There's some graphics. And when we get to the end, charge urgently, because they just decided that they were going to go ahead and go for it when the car said to not do that. And they were like, oh, we'll just make it and it'll be fine. It's not like a gas car. You actually have to pay attention and you don't want to drive it down to nothing because there won't be a gas station. There won't be an EV charging station right next door. So anyway, a lot of this stuff that goes on, like I said, and here we get to the part that I wanted to talk about. This is the part that really, really pissed me off. Home sweet, $4 a gallon home. So first of all, apparently, Louisiana is pretty cheap at $4 a gallon. It's even more expensive than that in Georgia, and Georgia is very cheap. But many places they're much higher than $4 a gallon. But to say something like that is really disingenuous. To be like, oh yeah, I'd rather pay the money and go to the gas station rather than do this charging stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to say before I go on and talk about my experience and exactly how you're supposed to do this is you need to do research. So I'm going to wind the clock back to the 1980s, well before a lot of you were born, when we didn't have GPS on our phones and our cars. We had to actually go, and if you were going to do a road trip, like if you were going to go from Athens to Denver or something, that'd be pretty easy, honestly, because it's just interstates. But you'd have to go in an atlas, which was a big giant map, and you'd have to like look at the route and figure out where you were going, and you could approximate how long it was going to take to get from place to place. But you would go and you would map yourself out these routes, and you would get on the route, and you'd have to do research before you left home. Electric vehicles, especially non-Tesla vehicles, are in the state of needing to have that done, right? You need to do research first. You need to use an app like Better Route Planner. Obviously, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the app, but you know, in the mid 90s, an app came out where you could actually put it in online and it would print you directions, which was super cool. Of course, it didn't have GPS, so you still had to figure out where the heck you were. But you know, it was really cool that you could do something like that. But anyway, so it's incumbent on people nowadays to do research, especially if you're not driving a Tesla vehicle. If you are driving a Tesla vehicle, really not so much, because you just put in the destination and it just tells you where it wants to go. You know, it tells you exactly how far you're going to drive, where you're going to stop, all of this stuff. I've talked about this before. In fact, I'll link a video at the end of this about part of our road trip. It's so easy to do a road trip in a battery electric vehicle if it's a Tesla, because the app is integrated. It knows where all the superchargers are. It knows how many there are available. So at any given point, if there's like 12 superchargers at a spot and 5 of them are taken, it actually has a little icon that says there are 7 available. You push the icon, up pops a whole thing, tells you all about the supercharger, whether it's a 150 or 250. Most of the new superchargers are 250s now, so they charge really fast. Tells you what amenities are there, like bathrooms, restaurants, shopping, all sorts of other stuff that you can get a hold of. So it's really convenient. But let's just take a look at our particular road trip, which, like I said, is approximately the same distance. I rang up the numbers. It was 1,085 miles each direction, or 2,170 total. Ms. Wolf's was 2,000 approximately. So we're really close in terms of the amount of time it took to do this. So here was one leg of the trip. So this was from Athens to Brooklyn up here. So you can see up the East Coast of the United States. We actually went through Washington, D.C., a little bit slightly different than what they have here. But basically, as opposed to 18 hours of charging, what you can see here is 13 hours and 55 minutes of driving time and 1.5 hours of charging, and 13 hours. And so if we look at something like Google Maps or something, and it might say 14 hours of driving time, that's an idealized driving time, right? So I think 5 stops, 5 charges is a fairly reasonable number for a trip of this length. It would be, you could do it with less than that stops, but man, it would kind of suck. So anyway, so, you know, 5 stops is a fairly reasonable amount of stops. And so if you think to get gas and to go to the bathroom and everything, I mean, geez, if you're super optimistic, you could do it in 5 minutes, but let's just be reasonable and say 10 minutes per stop. If you do that, that's 50 minutes. So you're only looking at like 40 minutes-ish more time to charge than just to go for it, you know, to do it on a gas engine car. And that's assuming you're going at, you know, at breakneck speed and doing pit stops whenever you get there. 10 minutes is a fairly fast stop in terms of making stops. So anyway, somewhere between like 1 hour and 40 minutes extra to charge on that leg of the trip. And then we get our other trip, which was back roads. So again, I want to say the other one was mostly interstate. Like if we look at this, we're talking about mostly interstate highways that go up to Brooklyn. Here, it was almost all back roads to, actually, I believe we actually went this way. So anyway, until we hit 16 to go to 95. So all of this stuff was back roads. Back roads work just fine. All of that stuff is great, but look at this. This is the big ticket item right here, is that we did this trip, a 5-hour trip with one 14-minute stop. And again, it's 299 miles, so with the right amount of gas tank, you could do this in one shot, but it's not a happy thing to drive 5.5 hours or 5 hours and 10 minutes in a vehicle. So even in an ICE vehicle, it would be pretty painful. So I would say one 10-minute stop. So you're really looking at very little difference between driving an ICE vehicle and driving an electric vehicle in terms of charging time. So that's really important to look at that, because it makes a really big difference in terms of the way that you're thinking about this. That's why I'm so pissed off at this article, because there's no reason for it. First of all, she definitely should have rented a Tesla Model 3 from Hertz, and her experience would have been way better. And second of all, if she'd used a program like a Better Route Planner, she would have known all of this stuff ahead of time. This happens to be, for my Tesla Model Y, but if I plugged in the settings of the Better Route Planner, if I put in and said I have a Kia, oh gosh, whatever it is. Let's see, Kia EV6, there we go. So I was looking at efficiencies here, but anyway, if you put in a Kia EV6 and whichever one that she had, they have GT line, wind, and light. And anyway, if she put in that, it would have told her where to charge and how much time it would take. It would have taken longer than the Tesla superchargers because they're very efficient, but no way it would have taken the number of hours that she was talking about taking to do all the charging. So that's just ridiculous. One thing I do want to make a note of here is that the efficiency of these vehicles is actually really, really important. So if you look at, you've got the Model 3, the Model Y, smaller numbers are better. Apparently the Hyundai Ioniq is actually the most efficient at 253 watt hours per mile. So basically it's how much energy you use to move the vehicle 1 mile. But you can see like our Tesla Model Y long range is 276 and any of these Kia EV6s is 288. Not a huge difference, but it's 4%. And what that means is for the same amount of energy, you're going to travel 4% further in a Tesla. So that actually, it makes a difference in terms of price because it's 4% less money, assuming everything else is equal and the charging rates are the same and all of that stuff. Not true really, but anyway. But if that was true, it would cost you 4% less money to drive the Tesla. And also you'd be able to go 4% further before you needed to charge at the same rates. So anyway, that does make a difference. It's not huge. And again, it's pretty cool that, Kia's got a relatively good efficiency here, but the Tesla is definitely the champ in that area. So anyway, all of this stuff is just going to show that basically, here we've got Google Maps and here we've got the Better Route Planner. I wanted to use this because it just gives a kind of an optimistic like 5 hours and 6 minutes here. And you can see, 5 hours and 10 minutes, so approximately the same, but then you're adding an extra 14 minutes. So anyway, versus Google Maps, there's very, very little difference in these things. So all of this is to say that road trips are not, you don't spend a massive amount of time. I mean, look at this. We're even on a very long road trip. It's still only going to be an extra hour and 26 minutes over, 14 hours of driving. You're adding an hour and a half. And again, you have to stop anyway. Even if you're driving an ICE car, just human beings, we have to stop to go to the restroom, to eat, things like that. So all of that stuff requires some amount of stopping time anyway. But there's no question that it is less expensive to drive an EV, but it's also a better experience, especially if you're driving in a Tesla, because again, you put in the route, it preconditions the batteries, it tells you where to go. It tells you how long to stop. It tells you when you can go again. All of that stuff makes it super easy going. You just don't have to make any decisions. And again, if you're driving another EV, you can just use something like a Better Route Planner and put that into your Apple Maps or Android Auto or whatever it is, and put that in and navigate using that system as well. The one thing I don't know about with other vehicles is whether it will start to prep the battery for supercharging if you are not using their own built-in app, but you could also then of course put in the destination. So anyway, you can do all of this stuff. So, the problem with this article again is it's going to make people think that this vehicle is only good for city driving and daily driving, and you can't have it as your primary car. I will tell you, we have a Mazda CX-5. It's the same approximate size car as our Model Y. And, we've driven almost 30,000 miles on the Model Y. And since we bought the Model Y, I think we put 5,000 miles on the CX-5. That's approximate. I don't have an exact number, but that's approximately how little we've driven the CX-5. Even though it's a perfectly adequate car, driving the vehicle is so much nicer. Driving an EV is so much nicer for road trips and for daily commutes that whenever we have a choice, we always drive the Model Y. Again, that's not to mention, I haven't even talked about the fact that you've got full self-driving autopilot, even if you're not using the beta. Like, look at this. This is almost entirely interstate. So even if you just have the autopilot software in your Tesla, that pretty much will keep the lane. It will make lane changes on the highway. It will pass slower vehicles. It will make lane interchanges or highway interchanges between different highways. It'll do all of that stuff. That doesn't require the beta by any means. It's $200 a month subscription. So you can honestly, if you're going on a road trip, you can just get a subscription for a month, right? So all of this stuff makes it so much easier. I think that, Rachel Wolf's number one mistake was really bad mistake was getting a not Tesla vehicle, because it makes a huge difference to the quality of a road trip. So that was the number one mistake. The number two mistake was not doing better research to find an app like a Better Route Planner. And I'm not being paid by these guys, by the way. I just love the app. I think it's a really good app. But anyway, it's just straightforward to look into this stuff. And if you're going to do something for the first time, like go on an EV-based road trip, it is incumbent on you to do a little basic research to understand what's going on with all of this. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of set the record straight and say, like, this is not the case. I just did a road trip that was actually a little bit longer than what they did. I did not find it inconvenient at all. It only added a couple hours total beyond what it would have been, you know, time-wise to drive an ICE vehicle. And it was, quite frankly, very easy, and it was cheaper, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And of course, with autopilot and with the full self-driving beta, it was basically, I didn't have to drive. I just had to monitor the car as it drove itself. So all of these things make a road trip so much better in an EV than in a gas-powered car. I don't know what else to say. The one thing I will say again, I'll repeat again, if the Wall Street Journal wants to have me write an article, or some other publication wants to have me write an article, I'm very happy to do that. I will either utilize this road trip as an example, or I will be happy to go back to like Austin. It's a nice long road trip. I'll drive to Austin and back, or Boca Chica and back, and do an experience, you know, and log everything and keep it all very straight, and be happy to do an article for you if you're interested. So just let me know. In the meantime, everybody have a lovely day. As always, thank you so much to my patrons on Patreon. I know I owe you all a Volkswagen Group software video that'll be coming this weekend, so I'll get that done as soon as I can. But in the meantime, everybody have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.